Welcome to the Watts Wellness Podcast. My name is Corey Watts.
And my name is Sanchia Watts.
Based in Perth, Western Australia, both of us have been on our own self-development journeys for many years now, which has led to this moment.
The intention behind the Watts Wellness Podcast is to help you meet yourself deeply as you navigate your own human experience.
Become present in this moment.
Take a deep belly breath.
And be open to receiving this week's episode. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Watts Wellness Podcast. Today, we are joined by a very special guest. And Sanchia, did you want to let everybody know who that is?
We have our mum on the podcast today, everybody. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Sanchia. Thanks, Corey. Nice to be here.
Yeah, pleasure.
Bit of an exciting moment, isn't it?
It is. This one's been long in the wings. We've been wanting to do this one for a little while now, and very excited to have you on. Not really sure where the chats are going to go today, but we're kind of just winging this a little bit. But obviously, you know, there's got to be, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, and there's got to be some little hints of wisdom somewhere there. So we're excited to have a chat to you and ask some questions and, yeah, go from there.
It's going to be fun. I think this has been quite requested by a few listeners. Get your mum on the podcast.
Get your mum on the podcast.
Perth Pottery Co. Get her on.
It's a little dangerous concept, isn't it? 3 of us on a couch, 3 of us with a microphone, 3 of us with a lot to say.
Yeah.
Here we go, everybody. Strap in.
Literally, we've just made a rule about not speaking over each other, and we're going to have to see how we go.
We're straight into it.
So it should be good. But as always, we always like to start the episode off with a strength and a challenge. So I will start with myself because Sam just pointed at me because she needs some thinking time. I think my strength out of this week has been back in the ice bath. It's been one of my strengths before, but it definitely went missing for a while. But I am 5 out of 5 days again for this year. So I did have a thing for wanting to do 800 minutes in the ice bath, and I'm a little bit behind at the moment, but plenty of time to make it up. Just going to have to do a few 3-minute, 4-minute ice baths. So I reckon that's definitely been the strength. I would say the challenge for me has been probably, I came back from Bali actually. I should mention that Bali was amazing. I was able to do some cool sound healing stuff over there with my partner Jenna, who's actually just chilling in the other room doing some work right now. But yeah, had an awesome time away there. So that was awesome to be able to refresh. But I think the challenge has been now just stepping back into sort of the busy life. But it is good to have a nice break and be able to, jump back into that. But I think getting organised after a holiday, I've got the holiday blues a little bit. So just a bit of a challenge to get back working. And what about you, Sanch? Did you want to go? You want to go next?
Yep. My strength has been just balancing work-life balance, spirituality, health, all of that. I feel like I'm doing a pretty good job of that at the moment. The challenge has probably been a bit overwhelmed with the amount of messages I'm receiving at the moment. It's just my phone's blowing up, and I've found myself just like turning off the phone, ignoring everyone and sort of isolating myself a bit because, it was quite overwhelming in the last week. Just so many emails, but it's a good thing. It's a good thing. Means business is rolling, which is always good.
Beautiful. Liz?
It's a good thing. I think my strength has been, I pretty much committed towards the end of last year to do 6 days a week Pilates, and I've got back into the swing of that, which has been great. Really do enjoy that as a way to start the day and get focused on health. That was a couple of years ago. I decided to make some changes to fit that into my routine. Challenge. Interesting apple in the tree. After the holiday period, I thought, need to back off a little bit of this alcohol consumption. So I've been cutting out that, not quite as successfully as Sanchia, but a couple of days alcohol-free in each week has been a focus. But, of course, we know with our social personalities, sometimes that's a bit of a challenge as well. So I'm just staying focused on that for a couple of months.
Beautiful. Love it, Liz. Yeah.
Thanks, Cause.
Awesome. Well, awesome strengths and challenges, guys. Always nice to start off with that and get a little bit authentic to start the podcast off. We don't really have a direction with where we want to take the podcast today, but I guess, Liz, we probably want to start with a little bit of your journey, mainly around parenting me and Sanchia and sort of the ups and downs of that. And me and Sanchia have already shared our story on the podcast, but it'd be good to kind of get your account of things a little bit, just moving through at the different ages. And look, we probably won't go super in depth because otherwise we'll be here all day. But we'll sort of go off that and maybe we can flow into some decisions and different things that happen.
It has been interesting listening to your podcasts and hearing things from your perspective. You've done a great job sharing your journeys and the different elements of what's occurred throughout your lives. But it's been quite interesting as the mother sitting off to the side, and I'm sure the same for your father, listening to you reflect over certain moments and seeing it from your angle and remembering how I might have seen it from my position. I guess, I've also heard you speak about, parenting styles, and that's been interesting to sit as the parent listening to that. I think we do parent as we were parented. And so I've reflected back on some of your podcasts and thinking about my own childhood. I was pretty lucky in having very strong parents and very proactive parents, community-minded parents. Both ended up being teachers. Dad was in a trade to begin with, but then went into teaching. So quite people and very involved in sport. Both ended up with an OAM for their dedication to their individual sports, netball, cricket and everything else in between. But I think Mum probably had a large impact on shaping my parenting style, and obviously coming on the podcast trying to give things a little bit of thought. When I was 8, Mum was diagnosed with a cancer, a lymphatic cancer, and she beat that when she was 40. But I think being raised by a parent who had faced a life-threatening situation shaped her view of the world and how she parented and what she focused on and what was important. And pretty much it was phrases like save your tears for the important things, get up and have another go and push through things. So that was our kind of, you look back around, and some of your audience would relate to this, that in the 70s, we didn't talk a lot about feelings and we didn't talk that much around, how you were feeling. It was more about getting on with things. So when I hear you guys discuss, that we've got to be more conscious in our communication and we need to be more reflective about, the way we validate emotions, I imagine some of your audience sometimes might be thinking, really? Do we? Because our generation wasn't raised like that. We were raised with compassion mostly for most Australian families, I'd suggest, but not with the same in-depth focus on emotion. So I think although you two were both validated in your emotions and I spent time listening and trying to guide you as best I could and same with your father, but allowing you to make your own decisions, probably not to the level that you're now consciously aware of around emotions and what triggers emotions and how to support healthy emotional states. So that's been interesting, listening from that point of view to your podcasts. But yeah, certainly for me, growing up with a mother who was dynamic, had a passion for life, had beaten a cancer, was a strong influence in my brothers and my life. And Dad was also pretty gregarious and loved a good time, as you know, because you knew your grandfather loved a good time. And so that probably runs through our genes a little bit as well. But then Mum passed away when I was 26, so also facing grief at an early age, and then having you two a couple of years after. I think I certainly as a parent had a focus on don't sweat the small stuff and let kids be kids and encourage you to be spirited and not have to be too conventional because life is short and to enjoy life. So that may be a bit of a background in the theme of some of your traits now, potentially.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting point that you make. I think the thing with like validating emotions and stuff, I reckon there is a bit of a trap, I feel, with parents and stuff when they do probably too much of like she'll be right, or you're tougher than this, or I actually made a post on this just the other day. So that's why it's fresh in my mind. But I think the balance that you probably got right with that is there was a time and place for that. And there were also times when it was okay to feel the way that we were feeling. And I feel like me and Sanchia were sort of taught that growing up. That sort of parenting style that you talk about, is there sort of some key moments like throughout both me and Sanchia's journeys as kids and stuff that you can sort of highlight or remember that really came into play?
I guess Sanchia being a couple of 2.5 years older than you, that was probably, oldest one. It's always the testing ground where we practice on. But certainly Sanchia, when she went off to school, she was a pretty spirited young toddler and very outgoing and quite dynamic in your personality, and you had a lot to say and a lot of personality. School was, and I've heard you talk about this in your podcast, school was a little tricky in terms of the conventions of school for you. So Sanchia also spoke about on the podcast, some of the challenges going through school and bullying. That was tough to hear and to watch and to realise, after a period of time what was going on at different periods. It wasn't extreme from my perspective, but I was a 70s raised kid where we fought it out in the playground and no one really intervened. But it was something that was affecting you, and with conversations we worked through it, and I don't know, Sanch. I mean, your reflection, I can see the look on your face of how you're feeling about that. So share.
Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't expecting the limelight on me this much this early, honestly. But
The firstborn.
anyway, yeah, continue on.
Okay.
Doing well.
But I think those choices that we made to change things around for you at each stage to make, I think for parents, you know, when things come up, you do have to address it, you do have to listen, and you do have to make changes based on what the child needs at the time, whatever that may be. So the change in school sounded like, you know, that was something that was unwarranted perhaps, but it wasn't. It was each move for you was a great move, and you shone in each new environment. And I think if we hadn't made those changes, life would have been quite different for you. I think your personality developed because of the changes that we made with you.
Were you like me as a child or more like Corey?
Oh, that's interesting. We reflect on this sometimes. I possibly was more like Corey in terms of introverted as a younger person. You know, when Corey was young and a toddler, he was, you know, a shyer personality, and I was probably more timid. I had two older brothers that were pretty boisterous. But I think you've got older, and we're quite similar as well. So I don't know whether I could say that I'm more like one or the other. I see traits of myself in both of you. I obviously see traits of your father in both of you. So it's a combination, I think, in most upbringings with children, that it's not one parent, it's two. Obviously the three of us spend a lot of time together and we're close, and especially the last perhaps 10 years or so, my influence might have been more current. But yeah, I think, you know, the changes we make as parents for our kids' best interests, most parents are trying to put their best foot forward at all times.
What do you think were some of the key sort of teaching points that you tried to embody with me and Sanchia as we were growing up? Was there anything in particular that you and Dad sort of focus on, I suppose, when sort of raising me and Sanchia?
I've always thought that with raising children, probably the key ingredient to consider is self-esteem. And I think any opportunity that you can help kids to develop healthy self-esteem is important, and not to have self-esteem damage. And so some of those changes that you made, Sanchia, in your schooling life was to avoid that self-esteem damage, where especially the first year of schooling, where it was a bit of a rocky road, you'd been put into a bit of a box of who you were, which I knew 100% wasn't who you were. And if we'd left you there, that would have damaged your self-esteem. So it was important to make a change. I think in terms of, say the question again, Corey, in terms of the key.
Just like key sort of points that you and Dad sort of focused on when raising me and Sanchia. Was there anything in particular that as parents you wanted to do for me and Sanchia in particular?
Well, both of you were very interested in sport, and whether naturally gifted in sport or talented, I'm not sure, but it certainly, we both came from sporting backgrounds and wanted you to participate in sport, but you both thrived in those environments as well. So we wanted to support you in that. As you would remember, a lot of those teenage years, it was at one point you're in 11 teams between the two of you, from basketball, cricket, football, netball, and there was a lot going on. But we committed to that, as like a lot of parents who have kids that play a lot of sport, that was our life of investing in you, both of you, to allow you to achieve whatever you wanted to achieve in those arenas, and wherever you wanted to take it. You could have gone into swimming as well, but kind of handbraked that with the early starts. So, you know, that was something that was a focus for both of us. But I was listening actually to an ABC radio program yesterday, and a teacher who was talking about being a music teacher in a special needs school, and how in special needs you have to explicitly teach certain things to those children. And I was probably from a teaching background, I think we also explicitly taught certain things to both of you as needs arose, including having conversations and manners and considering others and putting others first. I think, sadly, there is a bit of a me society, and I do watch people come into my own business at times with their children, and the kids have little concern for anyone else but themselves. And I think that's a bit of a sad thing that's been lost as parents, that we're allowing children to focus on their needs and their needs only. I don't think your father and I did that. I think we tried to, wherever we could, instill in you it was important to make others, whether it was in a team situation, at a birthday party, in your family situation, that you needed to consider others and you needed to consider each other. And probably, while I'm on a roll, said it was going to be a chat, didn't we? Probably while I'm at that point, the feedback that I've been given from friends of mine, and certainly I have felt in listening to the podcast, the one thing that I'm really proud of is the relationship that you two have together. And that doesn't come easily. And as we know, behind the scenes, there's some kerfuffle at times that we have to work through and talk through. But the fact that you two speak to each other generally, particularly on camera, respectfully, and that you value each other's opinion and you value each other's input into each other's lives where appropriate, that I feel great about, that I'm really pleased about, and would hope that would continue long after I'm gone.
I do want to ask you about that just a little bit. I guess one of the big things I think about with you at times is how do you go about managing the business relationships and then also the parent relationship, but then also managing like time for yourself as well? Has that always been a bit of a juggle to sort of balance out the three? Because I think me and Sandra have always relied heavily like on our parents, and especially you in the last few years. How do you find that balance between all three of them at times, having to be a business partner while also being a parent, but also looking after your own life and your own aspirations?
Good question. It's not easy, and it's not easy being a parent, and I don't think there'd be a single parent out there that would say it's been easy. It's probably the most challenging job you'll ever have, particularly when kids are, you're first adjusting to newborns and beyond. But every stage has its different moments, joys, but also difficulties. And in terms of juggling that, not easy. And obviously, Corey and you and I work together fairly closely now, and there's moments, but it's also respecting the fact that you have skills that I don't have and you have knowledge that I don't have, and vice versa. I guess at the end of the day, maybe I get the final say. But allowing you to, and not having an ego myself to not be able to listen to that. And certainly the business that I've developed today has largely been based on watching Sanchia, both of you to begin with, but watching Sanchia step out into her own business and having the courage to do that. I found that just so impressive and amazing, and that inspired me. So I think as you two have got older, and it was probably teen years, the relationship of being a assertive parent probably went out the door more, okay, at the end of the day, yes, I am the parent and hopefully I've got the wisdom, but we talk on the same level and it's a two-way conversation, and sometimes I turn to you for advice about things and share things about my life, and you are both in a position now after reading and studying different areas to give clarity as well, and I've certainly learned a lot from, what you two have, your journey over the last couple of years and what you've brought to the table in terms of your understanding about certain aspects of life. So I think as a parent, you're a little bit ignorant, or you're missing out if you're not availing yourself to having conversations with your kids and keeping current with where they're at and, what a current thought process is.
So with all that being said,
Too much being said.
keeping a good relationship's obviously important with your children. When Corey and I were a bit younger though, and things maybe when we weren't following all the rules, how did you manage that and still keep a healthy relationship with us?
I think, my opening comments around parenting, parent as you were parented, my mum used to spend a lot of time talking with me and my brothers, but particularly with me, I think, and listening to me and open dialogue conversations and never really criticising my view or opinion, but asking me to think a little more about maybe something I was doing or saying. And I think that has been all the way through with both of you, and even when this podcast started and there was a few rocky moments of having... And I always knew there was a rocky moment because I would have a call from one and a missed call from the other 30 seconds later.
Yeah.
And then another call and then another call. And then finally I'd decide to answer one and deal with that and deal with the next. But really it was about perhaps encouraging you both to think about the other person's point of view and put yourself in their shoes, which we've talked a lot about. And Corey, you give that great example of, maybe you can throw that in now, the 3 chairs. That's a great one.
3-chair example. Yeah, it's basically just around when there's a certain situation that's occurring, being able to sort of put yourself in each of the chairs. So you can physically do it, like you can get out 3 dining chairs and do this if you're ever having a problem with it. But you get out the first chair and you sit in that chair, and that's from your perspective on the situation that's occurring. So view it with all the animosity or all the emotions that you're feeling currently, like it's your chair, like you can feel how you want to feel about the situation. But then put the second chair out and sit there and put yourself in the view of the other person in the situation. So view it from how they would, view it from how they'd be feeling about it. If you were in those shoes, it's sort of that old expression of put yourself into somebody else's shoes, but sit in that chair and be them in the situation and take on all the points for that. And then the third chair is just sitting from a neutral perspective. So it would be like a fly on the wall or just a bystander, like somebody that doesn't pick a side, and then view the situation with all the details then, and then gather up all that information and then make your decision on what is actually occurring and decide from there what is the right approach, and if you're in the wrong, if you're in the right, and put your ego aside as well when you get to that point is the big one. So a good exercise. But yeah, great point.
So I think that's a perfect example of, I know you've learnt that through your coaching program, but to be able to embrace that and understand that and then verbalise that, I think that's 100% how you should parent as well, and encourage your children to think that way, because if we're all just always coming from our own egocentric position, there's nothing but conflict or an ego-based approach to life, which we all encounter those people, and sometimes they're not fun to be around when they only see it from one view.
Nice. So I'd like to get into a little bit more of the spiritual world for you, opening up maybe how you started on your spiritual journey and how did you find the word the ego, and how have you come to be who you are today through spirituality?
I think, like both of you in a sense, always intrinsically had a bit of an interest in there's more to the universe, there's more to the physical world than what we see sort of currently before us. So always a little bit open and investigating around that. But we did go through as a family a couple of, challenging years, and I think that's particularly when I started to think about, there must be more to this, why are these things occurring, and what is it that's creating some of these dynamics that are pretty tough to deal with. So I had a friend who was studying metaphysics. She's actually got a doctorate in metaphysics, Geraldine, and she invited me to a circle, a women's circle, where it was an opportunity to go learn more about meditation, learn more about what you would call the spiritual world, but it was also around manifesting, and it was also around conscious thinking, and that was a beginning point. And I used to go each Wednesday, and you were around 12-ish, and when I used to get home, you were always really inquisitive around that and asking me, could you come? And I said, no, it's just for adult women. And I do remember the night that I came home, and Geraldine had been teaching us how, as a bit of fun, as an add-on to what we'd done that night, was teaching us how to look for someone's aura. And you were so hell-bent on learning, well, how do you do that? So, it's funny that I reflect back on that, and that was probably your beginning of curiosity around that. But I've always believed in manifesting. I've always believed you attract what you think about. I've always believed that pretty much anything's possible if you put your mind to it. I know your father would have that view too. We also had a business that had a big personal development side to it. So there was a lot of books in our household when you guys were growing up around, thinking and Dale Carnegie and interacting with others, which probably played a role as well, I think, for both of you.
Dad made me read How to Win Friends and Influence People when I was like 10.
I think he got you the kids' version.
Yeah, he did. It was like pink and green. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
A lot of books.
That's good stuff. We probably will have to get Dad on for a bit of an episode soon, so it'll be good.
Yep.
Stay tuned for that.
Yep. Yeah. So that was sort of my beginning of that. And then from there, if I reflect upon different things that have occurred, don't think they happen without accident. I think that when you're in a good space, you attract to you, the circumstance that is relevant to where you're at.
So what about some of your own manifestations or spiritual moments that have come about that have really helped you to believe in the law of attraction and everything?
Okay. There's probably a few, but probably the more recent and relevant one, I think it's about 2 and a bit years ago, and you had started Sound Healing Perth, and I was watching that with keen interest and how that was developing, and pretty impressed with the fact that you'd gained control of your time, but you were doing something really healthy for the community, and you were really stepping into something that I could see was going to be great for you and for others. And I was teaching full-time and not overly enjoying it. I love teaching, but the bureaucracy and everything that goes with it has got to a point of making that not such an enjoyable profession at times. So I was considering where to next. My father had also just passed away, and so it was a bit of a reflective time about what's next and what's the next chapter look like. Corey's obviously playing football and finding his way. And a friend of mine, Lindsay, invited me to a vision board planning day with a group of women. And Debbie was a coach and talked us through vision board planning, which I had done before, but not quite in this way. And through that day, as I popped everything onto my vision board that I was interested in developing and bringing into my life over the next 12 months, I had cut out pictures to do with a pottery studio and popped them on my vision board and had started to think, I had run pottery classes for children in Melbourne before, but not here, and wasn't sure whether I could really find my way back into it here. And so you and I were looking for a studio for your sound healing, and the girl that opened a back, as she was touring us through, and she opened a back door and said, and we've got another room here that we'd like to create we'd like to have someone come in and create a creative space in. I looked at you and you looked at me, and I thought, well, that's a perfect room for what I'm looking for a pottery studio. And you said, I think that could be Mum. And then we stepped forward and sent the emails and began the process. And when this first studio came together and I went back and looked at my vision board, it was exactly the same look as what I'd actually put on my vision board, and actually wasn't the way I thought that the studio would develop. But when I looked at the vision board, it was a perfect match, and I thought, wow, isn't that incredible? So I worked full-time teaching and the pottery studio for about 9 months, hand in hand, both of them. And then at the end of that year thought, think I'm going to step away from teaching and give this a go as a full-time gig. Many people thought that was a bit crazy, but I thought it was the time and the way to go, and it has been. And, of course, Corey now very involved in that with me, and together we, are able to create a nice community sense. People enjoy it, and an income and some flexibility for us both as well. So I feel like I manifested parts of that.
Lovely. Good answer.
Thanks.
So, Mum, you've obviously, as we alluded to there, the manifestation of creating your own business. What do you think some of the biggest learnings were in terms of that journey, and how have you gotten Perth Pottery Co to the place that it is today?
I think you can't plan for everything. When you start something new, you just have to start, and you have to be confident enough that working it out along the way is all you can do. And you would have been through that, Sanchia and Corey. You're working through that with me and also in your own business. You can't have it all planned. You've just got to start and be brave enough to start and trust yourself and put in what you need to put in. And I must admit, with that business, I really created something that I thought I would enjoy. So, and I say that to people sometimes, it's wine, pottery, fairy lights, music, candles. It's exactly up my alley. So that helps because it's something I enjoy and it's environment and I enjoy. Does that answer the question in terms of the challenges?
Yeah, I think it's pretty good. I mean, obviously change is a big one, and change has been a big part of your life as well. Mm-hmm. Do you think that is something that you almost hang your hat on, like the ability to make changes when you've needed to or when different situations have arisen?
It's funny, growing up as a child, I probably would have said I did not like change and I liked things to be quite conventional. I think my mother passing away forced me to adapt to change at an early age, and I had to just get up and get on with things in terms of life, really, when the number one person in your life, when you're at that crucial point of 26 and about to embrace on having your own children and that's gone, you either have to, you're in a dark place or you get up and you get on with it. And I guess I have always been that person, get up and get on with it. And when change I felt was necessary and well thought out, it was a matter of just, all right, what do we need to do to make this work, and push through until you've got it right.
How did you navigate that? Obviously you mentioned like the passing away of Margaret, and me and Sanchia were never able to meet her, but you obviously went into motherhood without your own sort of mother figure there as well. So was that a challenging time to be able to navigate that, and what were probably some of the biggest things that you had to sort of navigate when doing that?
I think for anyone that's experienced that, it is a tough situation because the one person that you want to be around you is your own mother. And it also brings back the grief and the sense of loss during that time. We actually waited to have Sanchia a little while because I just didn't want to be in conceiving with that sort of overwhelming grief. I did have some people around me. Mum had a close friend who stepped into a bit of a role from time to time, and a couple of people, but I didn't have a sister. my sister-in-laws were busy with their lives, so it really was, up to me. But, you deal with what you deal with and you get through it. And I used to sort of also say I did have a very unique mum and just an amazing person. I would have rather have had her as my mother for the short time than perhaps a mother that wasn't who she was for a long time. So I was pretty blessed to have had the influence of my mum for that period of time. As you would both know, she was an Australian Sports Commissioner. She was president of the Australian Netball Association. She'd coached Australia in netball. She was well accredited in so many different areas, but also as a mother and as a person. So we were lucky to have that influence, and I see that in you both as well at times too.
Did you ever do any healing work after all this happened, or do you want to talk about any pivotal healing moments that you had?
Probably didn't do enough of it early enough. Different times along the way, counsellors and chats, and the friend that I alluded to before who had the doctorate in metaphysics, Geraldine, was certainly a sounding board and a good mentor for me for a few years there. And then since then, I have engaged in different practices of healing with, as you would know, with Pamela and, spiritual guidance along the way to just unfold and unpack a few things.
Bit of breath work. We went to a breath work class together.
We did.
That was big.
I wouldn't say that I was rowing the boat for that, but I went along and
we felt better after.
And we did feel better. I was quite amazed. It was quite a release and it was a healthy thing to do. And I was glad I'd experienced it because I know you both advocate for that, and it's that's what I'm talking about in terms of listening and being open to your children. That is something that I would not have been open to, but I thought, well, don't know until you try. Mm-hmm. So, that was a positive experience.
Nice.
Do you think that those journeys that you've been on have shaped you into who you are today? I mean, it's probably a little bit obvious and I think I know the answer, but I guess what I'm alluding to is, do you think that me and Sanchia would have turned out the way that we would have if you,
Yeah. We were living in a fairly affluent area of Melbourne at the time, and so some of the influences around you in your peer groups at times were on a different trajectory to where we were at that current time. And, that was a little tricky to navigate when we were going through a bit of a tough period. But I think definitely, you have not come from a privileged background with the circumstances that occurred, and it's probably allowed both of you to dive a little bit deeper into character and to standing on your own 2 feet and making your own way at times. As much as you've always had support, you've also been encouraged to, step out and have a go. Things haven't really been given to you. You've both had good fortune at different times, but you both have learnt how to navigate tricky times and how, life can be tough, but you can make it into what you want to make it if you choose to. And you're both great examples of that. And, I couldn't be prouder. And, most parents say that about their kids. But, the fact that you're both stepping out into your own businesses, Sanchia, what you've created, Corey's support to begin with, but then, really driving that on your own. I'm sure a lot of people would think that your business has happened overnight, but I've seen the background to that and everything that it took and the hours invested and the courage that takes to stand up and do what you've done and provide what you're providing for others is quite amazing. And we don't tend to pat each other on the back too often. It's not really our way of being, but it's absolutely, a full credit to you.
Thank you.
And, I do receive lots of, she's getting teary now, I do receive lots of compliments about both of you for all sorts of different reasons. But, there aren't too many children your age that have done what you've done at this point and creating not just your own business, but a business that, Sanchi, a business.
I just haven't heard that in a while. It's nice to hear.
You see, that's
thank you.
There's a weakness in me because
Yeah.
it's definitely something that I'm guilty of not always saying some things that I think, but think and it's so I apologise if I haven't told you early enough.
That's all good.
But yeah, I'm sure there would be Corey looking left and right. These are our moments. Corey loves these moments.
It just felt genuine.
It is
nice.
genuine.
Yeah.
It is genuine. I haven't made it up for the podcast.
That's good. Thank you.
But yeah, it's not very nice to hear parents, gloat about their own children. I don't think it's not what I would do and not our Australian way, but at the same time recognising that both of you are doing some incredible things. And what I was about to say was not just developing a super business, but a business that is supporting others in the way you are. That's impressive. I couldn't be prouder. And, you know, if I'm not here next week, that I've left something there in you. And in you that, you know, is brought the world to a better place, will bring the world to a better place. And as a parent, what more could you ask for? So it's nice that you've taken that on board, Sanch, that I am incredibly proud of what you've done. I'm equally proud of Corey's, you know, endeavour in terms of chasing his dreams through football and the dedication that he has shown to that over the last, feels like a long time, but we'll say the last 8 years, and the level of commitment that he shows to that is remarkable, impressive. I have never, ever heard Corey any time in his junior life or senior life say, I don't want to go to training, I can't be bothered, wish it wasn't tonight. He has been that kid always that was ready for, not always ready for school, but always ready for training, and never has ever shirked away from, you know, wanting to get up and go again, and was driven from an early age in all sports, very competitive and just wanting to do his best for others, for his team, for himself, for his coach, which, you know, not all players play that way. Not all kids grow up that way. So that was intrinsic with who he is, and that's a credit to you, Corey.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Very kind words. Probably leads pretty well into sort of our last question today, which is, what do you need to do before you die so you don't die with any regret?
Interesting question.
Big one, isn't it?
It is a big one.
Corey conjured up this one.
I've heard others answer this. I think in some respects, having, you know, faced a parent who, you know, passed away early, I do try and live life doing things along the way that I want to do. And, you know, part of developing my own business was to give that opportunity to get up and go to healthy things in the morning. And I've often said to you both, while you still invite me to do things, Corey will sometimes ring and say, do you want to come for a swim? And I rarely ever say no, because one day, you know, that invitation might not be there when he's busy or I'm not here. So I try and do everything as though it is not your last day, but, you know, live life to the fullest. But I guess I would like to see a few more tropical islands. That is my go-to. I do like a beach.
I didn't think it would go that way. But yeah, fair enough.
I didn't think it's go that way. No, I do like a beach day, and I do like a beautiful setting in that environment. So I probably need to do a couple more of those before the days are done.
Yeah. I think we all should travel together. Test our limits once again.
We've tested our limits on the podcast.
I would actually love to ask everyone what their biggest takeaway from today was.
Oh.
I can start. I think actually just like sitting down, being present and having to listen to you because you're in my ear and it's very loud in here. But like forced to really be present and sit and, receive your wisdom and actually really tune in and listen. It's sometimes uncomfortable, but also really nice to hear you speak your truth. So thanks for jumping on again.
Thanks, Sanch. And here am I thinking that you're always listening to me, and now I know you won't.
No, I am. But, you know, we're always so busy. We all have a business that we run and we're constantly go, go, go. All of us are on our phones all the time because our business kind of lives on there. And so for us to be present with no phones, microphones, earphones, really listening is just like,
true.
wow, here we are.
True.
Yeah.
Yes, that is true. And we do spend a fair bit of time together and overlap, but often not quite consciously tuning in the way we have today.
Yeah, most definitely.
What's your takeaway, Cause?
I don't know. It's a tough one for me. Like, I feel like a lot of this stuff, I sort of sit down with you, Liz, and have like these sort of deep conversations quite often, to be honest. So we've always sort of had that port of call, and like we've obviously in business together now, and we do have times, I think, where we talk maybe a little bit more, and that's not whacking anyone or anything like that. But I think probably the biggest takeaway, but it's probably something I already knew but is reiterated within this podcast, is just I think you and Dad both did a really good job with me and Sanchia. I'm very blessed to have had the parents that I've had. I always speak a lot about like the lessons and stuff, and I do think that you're shaped by the mentors around you as a young child. I think anybody's like that through the experiences that happen and your interpretations of them. So yeah, I'm very grateful for sort of the way things went, and I made mistakes along the way, but I think the way that yourself and Dad as well both parent us was a credit to you guys, and yeah, it's a credit to who we are today through the experiences and the learnings that you gave us. So very appreciative. So that's probably my
This is a
takeaway.
nice warm fuzzy. This is a nice warm fuzzy.
What about you, Liz?
Oh, well, yeah, it's going to sound a bit sickly to the audience, but yeah, the takeaway is, grateful for both of you. And, but I guess for the audience too, it hasn't been a perfect road, so please don't think it was. There's been many and, we're not sharing every element of every aspect of our lives. There's been some tough moments and for each of us individually and collectively. So it's nice that we have still maintained, including with your father, that there's open dialogue and healthy relationships. And, we also have been able to conduct our own healthy relationships, inside and outside of our family, which has been great as well. So, yeah, my takeaway is that conversations are important. Being open with your kids is important, and dialogue and listening and, asking questions with your children, raising your children to be thinkers and to be doers and to be givers. I think they're the... If you can get your kids to be thinking about others and, giving to others rather than considering themselves first all the time, that's probably as good as it gets.
Beautiful.
Nice.
Love it. Great way to probably end the episode. So thank you, Liz, for coming on. We certainly appreciate it. It's been a fun episode today to be able to sit down and chat. And yeah, we'll probably have to do a follow-up episode in one of the upcoming seasons. This has been the What's Wellness podcast. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Bye.
See you guys. Thanks for having me.